Philip VanDusen, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. Thank you so much for taking part in this interview today. I'm very happy to have you here. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Sure. I and in branding and design. Essentially, I proselytize about the power of branding and brand building to build your own personal brand as well as brands for your own business or your clients' businesses.
So, what inspired you to follow this path?
Well, it's funny. It wasn't a linear path by any means. I mean, I actually started off as a fine artist. I have my master's degree in painting. I taught painting and drawing for a period of time before I kind of fell into the fashion industry through the medium of t-shirt design, and that kind of enabled me to get all of my teaching yayas out by managing creatives. And I spent about 15 years in the fashion industry and then moved over to the branding agency side and worked with a couple different global firms and have worked with probably a third of the Fortune 100, big brands. And then I eventually, about 8 years ago, went off on my own and started my own consultancy. So now I work with small to medium-sized businesses and help creative professionals build their personal brands and survive in this challenging environment.
Amazing. So, I came across your content. I was looking for personal branding content on YouTube, and I found a video where you shared a link to your personal brand wheel, which I downloaded straight away. I thought it was such a great tool. For those who are unfamiliar with it, could you tell us what that is?
Sure. And it's funny that you bring it up because I was going to actually offer that to your listeners as
Mm.
a little free giveaway. I Developing a personal brand is can be complicated, and the more you think about it, the more it can become very confusing. And I personally feel it's exceptionally important in this day and age to really kind of own yourself, essentially have personal agency in your professional career. And like I said, I spent 30 years working for the man, for big global corporations and big agencies. And when I went off on my own, I realized I'd spent 30 years building other people's brands and I never built my own. And I had about a two-page Wix website at the time, and which was basically a picture of me and my resume and a slideshow portfolio. And I realized that I hadn't developed any content. I hadn't really, there was no I had no digital presence out there. I hadn't established my level of experience or authority in any kind of visual way. Um, and so I had to do that basically when I started off on my own, mostly to get clients because none of my big old clients were going to be any use to me in the work that I was doing now. And so over this last 8 years, I've worked very hard at developing a personal brand through content, through my podcast and YouTube channel, as you mentioned, and my newsletter, which is called Brand Muse. And in this process, just about a year ago, I decided to really kind of think about the process of building a personal brand. And I've done a lot of kind of work on my own and through coaches and consultants to develop my own professional outlook and approach. And one of the tools that I had used in working with a coach at one point was the life wheel. You might be
Oh, I love
familiar
it.
with the life wheel, which is a
Mm.
great, personal evaluation kind of tool. And I was thinking about that tool and I thought, what if we applied this principle to personal branding and the complexity of personal branding? And so I developed the personal brand wheel, which is essentially a tool that's broken into 12 different segments. And you can use it to map out or evaluate where you are in your own personal brand building journey, and also to give you kind of an easy to approach visual that can help you see where you may need to do more work or something that you may have forgotten about or an aspect of branding that you maybe hadn't even thought about. And so I use this in my mastermind community that I run for creative professionals, which is called Bonfire. And I use it to help people evaluate themselves kind of coming into that community, where they are in their own journey. And so they can also share it with the other people in the community. So those mastermind members can see what that member's goals are going to be, what they're going to be working on, and kind of help them grow and progress.
Would you like to share some of the what the areas are in that wheel?
Sure, absolutely. So it's kind of broken into four quadrants, four main quadrants. One is foundation, which is really kind of what is your story, what's your mission, what's your purpose, what is the value that you're bringing to the marketplace. The next quadrant is called omnipresence, and that's where you show up, how you're showing up, your digital footprint and your physical footprint, really, if you're going to conferences, et cetera.
Mm.
The next quadrant is called, excuse me, it's called engagement. And that is how are you engaging on social media? How are you putting your voice out there? Where are you developing conversations? How are you developing relationships? What kind of feedback are you getting? What kind of feedback are you giving, et cetera? So what is that? What is that engagement? And then the fourth quadrant, this is one of the ones that a lot of people forget about, is called transformation. And that is, what is your own personal transformation that you've gone through? And what kind of transformations have you enabled through other people or through your clients or through your audience or subscribers? And how do you capture that transformation that they are experiencing? How do you, build a story around it? And also, how do you publicize it? Essentially, how do you bring those transformations that you've created through your brand or your work? How do you showcase that to the rest of the world so it becomes a virtuous cycle of you're creating transformations in people and then them seeing that having been done and you're attracting new people. So that's kind of those are the major pieces. And each of those quadrants are broken down into three different sections. And I don't want to get, too deep
Okay.
into each one of those because it would take up the whole podcast.
We'll
But
share a link anyway. We'll share a link so
yeah.
people
Oh,
can
absolutely.
to your
So if you are curious, if you go to my website, philipvandusen.com, and go to philipvandusen.com/PBW for personal brand wheel. You can download the personal brand wheel, and there are instructions that come with it and kind of some questions and prompts that help you fill it out. And it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool tool. So there's a lot of talk about personal branding recently. Does it mean being an influencer? I mean, I think people might think of personal brand, they might think of content creators or influencers. Does it go beyond that?
Yeah, it really does. And the funny thing is that most people think of personal brands as being people who are independent,
Mm.
consultants or freelancers or who have their own businesses. But the thing is that personal brands, companies are valuing employees who have personal brands and are actively seeking new employees who have personal brands to be employees. So developing a level of agency and independence and your own voice, even if you're an employee of another company, is of great value. And it's the most important thing about it is that it gives you a voice that you own. And when you change companies or when you move employers or you're made redundant or you get laid off and you have to look for a new job, it's one of those things that you are carrying with you. It's transportable. It's something that you own. Because that's one of the things that happens to people when they leave a job is that they suddenly that business card that they had that carried their title in the company they worked for, which carried so much power, is suddenly gone. And they are just left with a LinkedIn profile and a resume, and they may feel untethered or unvalued or not really be able to quantify or put their finger on what is their value, what is it that they're bringing to the table. And so building a personal brand helps you develop that kind of independence, even if you are an employee. But certainly it's incredibly important for anyone who's an independent consultant or a freelancer who has to establish an online, a presence and an offer and develop a following.
Yeah. So in the years that you've been in this industry, what changes have you seen or evolutions in the personal brand sphere? Because that wasn't really a thing years ago. Having, even LinkedIn wasn't around. So it's just, I think your identity was the company you worked for. And if
Yeah.
you lost that, you're kind of in a bit of a crisis.
Yeah. I mean, I think that with the real explosion of content for the everyman, essentially, has
Mm.
really happened in probably the last 8 to 10 years. I mean,
Mm.
it's been a while, but certainly in the last 6 year, content has just absolutely exploded. And to a certain extent, I was just discussing this with a colleague yesterday, in fact. I think I think we're starting to almost reach what, they used to talk about peak oil, right? When oil was on the downturn, or the availability of it was that. I think to a certain extent we're almost reaching peak content, and the fact that there's so much content out there and so much noise, and AI and ChatGPT and some of the um, artificial intelligence tools that make it incredibly easy to develop content are going to, I think, push that explosion and that level of um, volume of content hitting the digital sphere to a maximum. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in terms of what AI does to content. Um, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, interesting. Yes, I guess we've been in the right time then. You've been in this industry the right time for seeing all these changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, it gives everybody an opportunity to be visible and to be heard.
Mhm.
And I think that's the real value in it, is it gives you a platform where previously no one had a platform. The only platform that you had was if you somehow managed to be able to speak on stage at a conference or something like that,
Mhm.
or, physical networking or whatnot. But this gives you it gives you a global possibility of a global footprint for what is the value that you're bringing to the table.
Great. So, do you think it's necessary to niche down when humans are so multifaceted, like much more than products?
I think that it's very important that you inject a level of personal story into
Hmm.
everything that you do. And I think that that's one of those things that AI cannot take away from us, is the humanity. And people buy people buy from people. They don't buy from brands. People don't trust nameless companies, nameless corporations. Um, and advertising has injected that into us, that's distrust of corporate America. And so the more that you can dial in your humanity, your story, your authenticity, your frailty, your wins, your losses into your content and into your presence that you bring to the business world or the social media world, the better, because it really makes you memorable. And it also um, the more vulnerable that you can be, and this is one of the hardest things to do actually as a content creator, the more vulnerable that you are, the more people can identify with you. And so that's one of those things that is something I work on every day, to be honest with you, is that it's difficult the larger the audience that you grow to
Mhm.
be to let yourself be seen as not perfect.
Yeah, but that's a
But
great
that's yeah.
magnet, I think, for people. People love that. And also the vulnerability. It's a big word right now about, in relation to authenticity. But I think a lot of people are, holding back on their personal brands because they don't want to, inspire haters or be judged by others. So how personal should a personal brand be? And also, for people who are afraid of, vulnerability, and I know some people might want to promote their business, maybe coaching or what have you, but they don't really want to be out there in terms on social media. What kind of solutions could exist for people like that, who just don't want to be too so vulnerable or visible?
Yeah, yeah, and in my mastermind community that I run, there are a number of people there who don't want to put their face to the content they produce, or they don't want to be, have themselves front and center on their websites. And it's not absolutely critical that you show up as a human being,
Mhm.
visibly, but it certainly helps. And there's
Mhm.
ways of going about that which you can, I guess, mitigate your exposure, so to speak. You can either
Mhm.
do it in more kind of closed settings where you might have a webinar and people have to sign up to show up to it, or you're offering content in more of a kind of a closed or gated way. Podcasts are a really great way to go about
Mhm.
that, because it's not visible. You don't have to, publish the video of your podcast interview, as many
Mhm.
do. And it can be a very, very personal, intimate medium, because you're there in people's earbuds,
Mhm.
and and showing up in their lives when they could be driving or meditating or sitting in their living room. And so there's ways of bringing your message out to the world where you're not really exposing yourself dramatically, and you can take baby steps. I mean, that's
Mm.
the thing. It's like you can just try stuff out and and see what feels good and pursue that. And over time, it's interesting. You get more adventurous. You will start you will start to feel comfortable with what you're doing in the beginning, and you're going, oh, what if I did a live stream? I'd been doing videos for on YouTube for, I don't know, 2.5 years before I did my first live stream. And it wasn't that it wasn't available. It just was that I didn't have the confidence to do it. I wasn't sure exactly what I would do on a live stream. It felt very exposing. And so, but after, doing 150 videos on YouTube, and getting a lot of comments and subscribers, and people asking me to do live streams, I built the confidence to be able to do it. So it's just like anything. You start off, you try it, you fail, you have to build confidence over time, and then you grow.
Yeah, you know what? I just written down here. I've done 1,000 videos, 10 years, and I haven't done a single live stream.
Venus, Venus. Oh my God. We
I
have to
know.
get you on a live stream. You would be great.
Yeah,
You would
because
be
it's
great.
interesting.
Absolutely.
I know I have to step
It's
out.
so much fun.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, Venus, as soon as you do it, it's like incredibly addictive
Oh, can you imagine it's a
because
high? Yeah, you get high. Isn't
it
in the
is. You do. And the
yeah,
funny thing is when you're live and
yeah,
people are watching you and they're
yeah.
commenting and they're showing up in chat, it's really, really energizing. Like
Mhm.
my assistant teases me because she says, you couldn't do a live stream under an hour if you tried. And I always go on and think, I'm just going to be on half an hour. And then, an hour and 15 into it, I'm still chatting and answering questions. And, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, because I do premieres, so I do get that kind of live chat
Oh,
thing. So I do
see, I've
that.
never done a premiere.
Oh well, well
Yeah.
that's so what I did is I've taken advantage of things like Vlogmas. I don't celebrate Christmas, but just to kind of get that daily upload, that's something that's really helped me over the years. It's just because I never tried to be, or it was never my intention to make videos. I just had companies who wanted me to do video reviews, so of
Mm.
products. So that's how it started. I was so shy at the beginning. It just took me a long time to make videos. I had to, edit them. Then in May 2018, I did a 30-day challenge, uploading every single day. The first few were
Wow.
really wooden. By day 24, it was a one take. So now I do one take videos with no editing, and I feel very comfortable with long form. I'm less comfortable with short form in TikTok, or even I've never been live, and I've done live Instagrams only if someone's paying me to do it. But it's just I'm quite scared of just doing it. But I think now I have two YouTube channels. So I have one for the podcast and then one for Venus O'Hara. So I might, and the one Venus O'Hara got 132,000 subs, but I want to kind of promote the other one a bit more. So yeah, you inspired me. So I'm going to try and take the
Absolutely. Do
plunge.
it. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can
But the
imagine.
funny thing is
Mhm.
like you will notice that you will jump back in time to like
Yeah.
video 20 when you feel wooden and you feel
Mhm.
tentative, and but you'll open up.
Yeah, because there's so many tools now. I'm looking at a lot of creators out there and trying to see, which business model is most attractive to me. Because what I love about a lot of people who've been on this podcast, they have this incredible business model, which is they are selling courses. They're doing one-on-ones at a premium rate, and then they've got a book and a TED talk. So that's the kind of thing that I really want to create for myself, because I never had this idea of personal brand. I was just creating content and getting money for it at the beginning. So that the idea of branding just came to me very late in life. And I've got to tell you, one of the things that really I'm one of my biggest regrets after 15 years, not having a newsletter list. I mean, how terrible is that? An email list.
Yep.
Is that a
It
crime?
is. It's a missed opportunity, but
Yeah.
you can do it now. That's the
Yeah.
thing. And you do what you do and you
Hmm.
build and add over time. I mean, I started with a newsletter, and I started with a news. I had no YouTube channel. I had no podcast, and I put out a newsletter every 2 weeks for 6 months. And then I started a YouTube channel, and I drove people from my YouTube channel to my newsletter. And then 2.5 years later, I started a podcast, and then I built a course, and now have a mastermind community, which is a membership community, and I do one-on-one coaching and consulting and client work, obviously, on top of all of that. It's pretty crazy. But you just you build and you add on to as you go through the journey. And there's no absolutely right way to do it. Um, but I would slap your hand and say you absolutely have to start an
I can
email
feel
list.
it. Yeah. That's the first
Because
thing.
here's the thing, Venus. The thing about email is that it's just like podcasting. It's very intimate,
Yeah.
and you own it. It's one
Mhm.
of those things that social channels can go poof, right?
Mhm.
Talk to all the people who built $1 million brands on Vine. Like
Mhm.
Vine is gone. It like went poof one day.
Mhm.
And Twitter, I have close colleagues who have built big businesses on Twitter, and Twitter is a dumpster fire right now. There are people who are leaving Twitter in droves to go to Threads and other
Mhm.
platforms, to Discord, etc. And so you can't trust social channels. You have to make sure that you're building a safety net where you control the conversation between you and your audience. And an email list is um, the most ownable digital real estate that you have. You have two. You have your website is
Mhm.
one. You own that. No one can take it away. And you have your email list. And
Mhm.
everything else is completely ethereal and could go poof tomorrow. So
Mhm.
get on that.
Yeah, I need to do it. But I was one of the reasons that was I was delaying it was because I didn't know what my hook kind of free gift could be. But now I've
Mm,
worked it out because I'm going to do something based on the that wheel of life as well, but not very different because I create meditations. I'm very passionate about
mm,
affirmations. So at the end of my podcast, I do this whispered affirmation that's related to the topic of the podcast. And I also have a profile on Insight Timer, which is a very big in meditation app. So I do this whispering, like ASMR style. So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 12 areas of life. I'm going to make 5 affirmations that are very powerful for each area, as well as some overall affirmations about I attract
cool.
miracles, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to make a half an hour, maybe 15-minute file, but then an 8-hour file. So, you can listen to it while you sleep because affirmations are so powerful to connect with subconscious. And it's something that's really influenced my life. And there's lots of
Mm,
science to support that. So that's going to be my fight. It's going to be the life upgrade meditation or something like that. So by the time this comes out, it'll be ready. It will be ready. So sign up to my podcast, to my newsletter. Anyone listening to this. So that's my idea. It was taking me such a long time to think about what is the thing, but everyone wants to improve their life. Because my challenge has been, I'm interested in a lot of topics because I was doing sexuality for so many years, but this podcast is about reaching climax in all areas of life. And it came about because I had an interview with Marie Claire Brazil years ago, and the woman who was interviewing me was really stressed. She said, "I'm going to be late. I'm in traffic." And I said, "Okay, fine." When we got on the call, I told her that I have no alarm since 2009, and she was just like, "Wow." So I realized that I had a lot of lifestyle things that I wanted to share with the world, and that's what the
mm.
premise of this podcast. It's about reading and sobriety, nutrition, spirituality, health, all of these other topics as well. So I do a
Yeah,
book
we
review
could
in
go off
every,
on, we could go, I'm way into a lot of those topics. We could go
but
off
but
on a
it,
lot of tangents.
that's the challenging thing when you want to have a personal brand. It's like, so my viewers are expecting a certain type of content from me, but I'm into spirituality. I'm actually writing a book now about orgasmic manifestation, which is like about how to use this energy to manifest, which is a very unknown topic. But it's I'm trying to be interested in the kind of like a lot of wholesome lifestyle things that I how I live my life. I'm just converting it into content basically. And I'm also a vegan, so if you mention vegan, that can really put people off. so, so I have to be very careful. And so I was thinking, what is the thing I can attract, get people to sign up? So now I think it's the, upgrade your life meditation because everyone wants to
Mm.
upgrade their life. I
And I
think.
found that the content that
Mhm.
I do, I mean, a lot of content I do is on branding and marketing and design
Mhm.
and things like that. But I very often foray into mindset and to manifestation.
Oh
And
wow.
I just recently did a video on creative mental fitness, and it was much less about creativity as it was for self-care and mindset and physical fitness and nutrition um, and sobriety and things of
Mm.
that nature, which are much more lifestyle focused. And that's one of the things that I think that content creators, when they're building an audience, if you share your whole self,
Hmm.
and you don't ignore, if you're completely myopic to just your piece of business or the one piece of business value that you bring to the world, you're not a whole person, and you're not really being true to yourself, I think, entirely. And you're doing it to a certain extent a disservice to the people who you're delivering your value to, because no one compartmentalizes their life, right? All of our pieces of our lives blend into each other. So if you ignore those blending moments or those interdependencies, then you're not really giving all the value that you could give. And in my particular case, I work with creative professionals, and creatives are very emotional people, and they wear their heart on their sleeves and their creativity on their sleeves a lot of the time. And so you have to take in consideration mindset and manifestation and belief systems and physicality and all those different areas which feed into your ambition and your emotion and your energy and what you bring to the table as a professional. You can't ignore those things. And the funny thing is the more content I do on things like
Hmm.
that, the more responses and engagement I'm getting, because it really, really resonates um, with people when you speak to them on that level.
Yeah, I think it was what you said now, just written down here, mindset. And that's a really big thing. And I think you have to have the right mindset when you are creating a personal brand. I mean, I know, for example, it can appeal to, vanity in the case of content creation or influencers. Whereas for me, I feel I'm quite shy, really, even though, I love the lifestyle I've created. So I had a spiritual awakening in 2016. So I realized that it wasn't about me. It was just about the message. And that really shifted how I made my content. But what's been I've been struggling with, because I feel like I'm at a plateau now, but I want to go big. I've just read this book, the Magic of Thinking Big. So I'm gonna apply all those lessons. But mindset is so big, is such a big topic, because it's about how worthy you see your content, how helpful you see it. For example, yesterday I interviewed this woman who has a much smaller following than I have, but she's applying much more professionalism and intention to her content. She's got a room in her house that's padded out for podcasts. I don't have that. It's just she's really, focusing on it a lot more. So I'm thinking, wow, it really inspired me to see other people, really put their heart and soul into what they're doing, and also assuming the persona of someone with a very strong personal brand.
Mm.
Step out of that shyness and just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the hardest thing to do to start. And that I focus
Mhm.
a lot on the message of just starting, because
Mm.
it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. But the thing that I try to encourage people to understand and remember is that when you start doing content or putting yourself out there as a brand in any way, no one's watching. See, everyone always thinks, I'm going to do this and everyone's going to criticize me and everyone's going to be watching and they're going to be paying attention. The beauteous thing of doing content is that at the beginning, you have no audience. No
Mhm.
one is watching, and you're completely free to get out there and be stupid and make mistakes and be stiff and, get dry mouth and all those things that happen to you when you start doing those things. And you can practice and you can get better, and your audience will filter in over time as you refine your message and your presence. And it's one of those things that helps de de-terrify people in a way, to know that no one's there, right? And
Mhm.
it's, on one hand, you're like, what? No one cares about my message. And, there aren't going to be 50 million people watching me when I do my first live stream. But the answer to that is no. And that's a good thing because you're going to be figuring it out at the beginning.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's what's important to me has been trying to make that shift from being scared about doing something to actually being looking forward to it. So
Oh, yeah.
hopefully that will happen with so in your live stream, did you have actually a script that you're or you just press record and just kind of went with it the first time
I
you were
do both. I mean,
yeah.
at the beginning, the very first one I did was in what's called an AMA, which is Ask Me Anything. And I just
Okay.
turned it on and I said, hey, anyone have any questions? And then they started asking me questions. I mean, at that point, I had, I think, 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And
Mhm.
so I had a following, and there were, I
Mhm.
don't know, 150 people in the live streams. And so I got
Oh
a lot of
wow.
questions. People wanted to know what was going on, or wanted to pick my brain on stuff. And then over time, I started to do live streams, which are on particular topics. They were kind of, mini webinars, so to speak.
That's
And
cool.
I would make, I make bullet pointed notes where I just make sure I had, was going to hit on all the topical themes that I wanted to talk about. But a lot of times it's very off the cuff. It's not deeply scripted in any way. I kind of just give myself a bunch of talking points, and then I find myself able to kind of ramble through them.
So we're talking about something you said earlier about creativity. How do you deal with like writer's block or creative blocks? I mean, do you always, you must have times when you have to, deliver some work to a client and then you just don't have the
Yeah.
ideas. Do you have any tips
I
on that?
never have creator's block.
Okay,
I
that's
don't.
amazing.
And the reason why I don't is a process that I employ, which is that,
Okay.
and I brought this, I think, from the fashion industry, my work in the fashion industry, is that I take inspiration from anywhere and everywhere. And whenever I have any kind of a little creative spark or idea, or I see some other content where I think, what's my take on that? Or I don't agree with that. Or that's absolutely fascinating. I want to learn more about it. I'll take note of it. And I keep a Google spreadsheet on my open in my browser all the time and on my phone. And whenever I get an idea, I'll just jot it down really quickly. And when I was doing videos in the very beginning, I started doing videos and I wrote down 20 ideas for videos and I started doing videos. And by the time I was on the 20th video, I had a list of 150 things in that spreadsheet that I wanted to do videos on. So
Oh,
you
wow.
just have to like open up. It's a practice. It's just like meditation. It's like you kind of have to open yourself up to inspiration and take it and recognize it whenever it happens. And the other thing is that nothing is new under the sun. Like in graphic design, there's very, very little that's absolutely brand new.
Mhm.
And so when you find inspiration for design or for music or for anything that you do, you are you have to open yourself up to looking at what other people are doing and say, what's my take on that? Or that's an interesting subject. I've never addressed that subject before. And and to pay attention to what other people are doing and take inspiration from it. Not to copy them, not to, plagiarize, but to be open to the fact that you have a perspective on that. And in the fashion industry, one of the things I'll just mention this, people wonder how do all of these fashion companies come up with the same color and the same styles and the same cuts of clothing every season, right? You go out to all these different stores or online or whatever, and you go, oh, like my wife recently, she hates frilly things. That's not her style. And ruched sleeves became like a thing. You couldn't find a blouse or a top anywhere online that didn't have like some sort of ruching on it, right? Puffiness. And how do these companies all know to do this? Well, the reason why they do is because they all copy each other and they all shop the same stores in the same countries for inspiration every year. And they're all seeing the same things and they're all sampling their garments in the same factories in Asia or India or Milan. And it's a very incestuous industry. So they're all being inspired by each other and they're all picking up on each other's cues. They all go to the same trend shows. And so they naturally start to develop the same kinds of products. And it's the same thing in the content world, you know?
Mm.
You just have to go out there, be inspired, and capture that inspiration and internalize it.
Amazing. So you mentioned sobriety earlier. How has that helped you with your creative process?
Yeah, well, as I said, I haven't mentioned this a lot on social
Mm.
media, but I have been sober 35 years, just
Wow.
celebrating 35th anniversary. And so I got sober as a young man, but it was earth shattering. I'll just put it that
Mm.
way. I mean, I I was I've used alcohol and drugs when I was a younger man, and I was surprised I survived as long as I did. But when I got sober, it really, really kind of opened my eyes, and it took away kind of the veil of um, not being able to see things clearly and not being able to evaluate. I was, as an addict, I was um, everything I did was self-serving, and as an addict of any kind, you are completely self-absorbed, and your pleasure is what's the most important thing. And it's difficult to open yourself up to be inspired by the world when you're in that kind of a fog. And so taking away that veil, that curtain between you and life, the experiences of life, can really open just floodgates of inspiration and ideas, um, and you learn how not to fear the world and how to not fear the process, and sometimes not fear not knowing. Um, and that's one of those things that, over time and becoming more mature, you learn, you get more comfortable with the idea that you don't know everything, and that life is a learning journey.
So were you in the fashion industry when this happened? Because I can imagine the fashion industry is a place where there's lots of things happening that are
No, I
not
wasn't.
so wholesome.
It was before I found my I was still a fine artist at that time. And
Okay.
I it was actually when I got sober is when I got my first real good teaching gig in the south of France. And
Oh, wow.
I was teaching painting and drawing there in Lacoste in France. It was and when I came back to the United States, I moved to New York City, and that kind of started my whole journey into the fashion industry, because I was creating monotypes, kind of printmaking there in France, and when I came back, I started putting those monotypes on T-shirts and selling them to boutiques in New York City, and that's kind of how it all started. So it would actually my career came about after I got sober.
That's amazing. It's so great to have that, be convinced by sobriety when you're in environments that are not known for being sober. I think it's just such a
It
great
was
thing.
difficult. Let me put it that
Mm.
way. I mean, I was in very early sobriety working as a teacher at a college where there were a lot of, junior year abroad American
Oh,
students
wow.
who were artists, and we were
Yeah.
in the Luberon Valley in the south of France, and there was a lot of partying going on. And it was quite difficult to maintain, but I did it. I hold that up as kind of a badge of honor in a way.
Mm. Yeah, I think for me, it's a lot of been there've been a lot of times of euphoria in my career, like getting emails where you get a book deal or really big things happen to me in the first few years. And I remember just, having this just ecstatic feeling and wanting to celebrate with cava, which is the Catalan version of champagne. But now I don't have that, and it's kind of cool just to be. I feel more grounded. And what the best thing about sobriety for me is, on Fridays I go to a private members club. They have this after work thing, and I have such a fun life that I don't have that need to have a drink on a Friday to escape the week because my week is
Mm,
cool. You know what I mean? It's a really nice feeling.
that is.
Yeah.
And I would encourage any creative people have a tendency to fall victim, I think, to abusing substances, because there is this mystique, there's this historical kind of like romanticism to doing that. And it's just such a slippery slope that I just caution people to be very careful about that. And if they find themselves on the downside of that slippery slope, to get some help to get sober, because the life of a creative with a clear mind and is a much better place to be.
Yeah, I think the allure is part of like the altering your perceptions. I think people can see that that is maybe a good thing for creativity when in fact it can impair a lot of your creativity and production of, for sure. You know.
Yes, well,
Mm.
that's absolutely absolutely true.
I had a big question for you now. What is the best book about personal brand? Because I just bought this actually. I'm reading this at the moment. It's pretty cool. You know this book?
I don't. I don't
I
know
really
that
like
book.
it. I was looking at it on
Told Not Be
Amazon.
by Jessica Ziwig. So for anyone who's listening, we should know
Yeah.
what
Oh,
book
sorry. Yeah. I didn't
Venus is
remember
holding
people
out.
listening. Yeah. So I actually got this recently because I was looking on Amazon for books about personal brand, but I wanted one that was kind of recent because I mean, things from 2007 might not be applicable today. So do you have any books that you would recommend on, do you read
Yeah,
about on the
looking over
subject?
at my shelf. There's a book called Creative Confidence, which is put out by, and it's not really on personal branding, by the guys at IDEO. But I think more than anything else, the one book that's helped me that I talk about a whole lot, and it's not really on personal branding, it's really more on mindset and thinking,
Mhm.
is The Power of Now by Eckhart
Okay.
Tolle.
Mhm.
I think that that book has done more for me in terms of mindset than
Mm,
almost anything else, because it helps you be present. And I
mm,
think being present is kind of one of the core competencies of creativity and of relationship building and of being true to yourself. And I think all those sorts of things are what really are key to personal branding is understanding yourself, your story, your purpose, your value. And if you're too stuck in replaying old tapes of the past or too fearful about projecting things that may never happen, learning to stay mentally in the now is is a way to make sure that you're discovering and taking full stock of yourself, as well as really taking full stock of what's around you and who your audience will be and what you have to bring to the table and what value you can offer them. Um, and so, anyway, so for me, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle was really transformative.
So I ask all of my guests the question, which is the book that changed your life? Would that be yours?
I think yeah,
Mm.
that's definitely the book.
Great. So, and which phrase or affirmation or quote do you live by?
Um, I have this quote that I actually came up with, which I try to live by, which is dare to suck.
Okay.
And then what
Explain.
that means is that you just have to do it. You just start. I mean,
Mm,
everybody sucks at whatever they do when they start. You
mm,
can't not suck, right? I use this analogy all the time that if you want to learn to play tennis, you can buy great tennis clothes, you can watch 20 tennis videos, you can buy the coolest tennis racket, you can watch a bunch of tennis matches on television. But until you get on a tennis court and start hitting balls all over the place, over the backstop and, into the net, you aren't going to learn how to play tennis. And so if you want to do anything, you got to jump in. And when you start, you're going to suck. So that's my phrase. It's like dare to suck because you start that way, but it gets better.
So I'll bear that in mind when I do my first YouTube live. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Venus, dare to suck in YouTube live.
So where can people find you?
Sure. Go to my website, philipvandusen.com. And
Mhm.
if you go to philipvandusen.com/PBW, you can get the personal brand wheel, the tool we talked about at the beginning of the video. And you can reach me and see a lot of my content and portfolio and my coaching offer and Bonfire, my mastermind community. All that stuff is available through my website.
Amazing. So thank you so much for joining us today on the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Venus. It's been a real pleasure being here. It's a great conversation, and thanks for inviting me.